Hello everyone, welcome by Hammond Sessions. Today we have a great guest in our studio, the one and only Mr. Josh Phillips of the famous rock band, one of the most famous rock bands in the world, Procol Harum. Josh, welcome.
Thank you very much.
How are you?
Well, thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Okay. Yeah, it's an honor, man.
What a lovely place.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
This really takes me back.
Oh, you really?
Yeah, when I worked in a music shop, we used to sell these in the
wow.
70s. Yeah.
It's a Dutch organ.
Is it still horrible, or is it? It has its sound.
Yeah, it sounds like a sort of fox organ.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember. Anyway, I'm sorry.
But no. But you are playing the Hammond.
Yeah.
And how did you get involved with the Hammond?
It's a long story. I don't know.
Okay,
We've
no,
got
we
long
have
enough.
time.
But from a very early age, I started playing the piano when I was about 9 years old. And my mother, she remarried this guy who worked in a music shop, and he was a music teacher. He's no longer alive, and he was not really a friend of mine in any shape or form. But I got to know lots of music people, and there was a music school in this music shop, and I got to know a lot of the guys that worked there, and the salesmen and things, and they were selling Hammond organs. They were a Hammond organ dealership, and I was probably 10 years old when I first played a Hammond organ. I was intrigued by the drawbars and the whole thing that you could make so many different sounds with it. And I used to have to go along to this place called the Medway Organ Club, and these very odd people would be there.
Yeah, always the same story.
Lots of weird people, all listening to one person playing an organ with his back to the audience.
Yeah,
because they all sat on the stage looking at looking that way, and the people behind them, like some kind of coach driver, train driver or something. And that sort of started to get me interested. But I hated the sound that they were making, because it sounded, the wrong sound from a Hammond organ.
Yeah.
Full vibrato and very reedy. And I thought, I'm sure I can do better than that. And I think probably I was listening to, well, obviously I was listening to the Beatles and other bands and stuff, but I also discovered ELP, Keith Emerson,
yeah,
which gave me that interest in perhaps I could throw some knives in it or get involved somehow. And I remember going along to this place, to the organ club, and I was asked to get up and play. And I think I played Smoke on the Water.
Okay. Yeah.
On this organ. It was a Hammond, I think it was a Hammond, but it had a wah pedal built into it.
Okay, yeah.
So there was a drummer, and I was only 11, 12, something like that, and I played this stuff, and nobody clapped. Nobody at the end of it.
They missed the vibrato.
So I got off the stage, and as I was walking back towards the table, I heard this old lady say, "I don't think he's very well mentally, because he shouldn't be playing that sort of thing." And I thought, right, that's a good reason not to play that stuff, but to play rock. Yeah. And that's what first got me into it. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah. Man, what a story. Yeah.
That guy's not well.
And what was your first Hammond?
The first organ I had wasn't a Hammond, actually. The first one I had was a Farfisa.
Okay.
VIP 233. Do you know that?
Yeah, I know that. My first organ was an Elka.
What, 606?
Yeah, no, the Panther.
Yep, okay.
Yeah.
Well, neither of them were Hammonds. The Farfisa, it looked like a sweet shop. It was all bright green and yellow, and it was drawbars. And it sounded absolutely horrible by today's standards, but I couldn't afford a Hammond. Then I got an Acetone GT7. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Which was a bit like the Hammond X5, I think. Not the XK5, but the X5. and then I had a Sharma cabinet with that. Do you remember the Sharma?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, which I had adapted, and I had I think a 300 watt amplifier put in it, and I had 2 horns put in the top, and a Marshall or something, whatever it was, it was loud, and I loved it. So that was, then I was getting rocky, and I was about 16, I think, and the first time I played a Hammond B3 was at the Who studio, the rock band The Who, in 1978, because I was involved in the Who film Quadrophenia. So the first time I played a real one was 1977, 78, which is, that's a long time ago, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
God.
Time flies when you have fun.
So long ago, 1978,
Yeah.
40 years ago, yeah. But of course, that was then the seed was planted in my head. Of like, right, I want a real one. Then I had a XK5. Then I had a very rare one, a Hammond TTR.
Okay.
Which was a bit like your M that you've got in studio here. Similar. It's tone wheel, but it was transportable. Okay. And I had that for a long time until my roadie killed it, because he said to me, I've serviced it for you, and he used 3-in-1 oil, which is like,
wow,
you'd put on a bike, or your door hinges. And I said, shall I kill you now? Or because you've just killed my organ?
Yeah.
And that was the end of that. So, and then I think probably they've always been rented ones or whatever, until I then started to get into the new digital stuff, which is tremendous, and we'll get onto that at some point.
Yeah. You're starting to play the Hammond or the organ when you was 13?
Yeah.
But what was your inspiration? What organ player or Hammond player?
Well, I'll tell you, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
I've already mentioned Emerson.
Yeah.
Keith Emerson.
Keith Emerson.
Of whom I did meet a couple of times, and I know his son. So he was a big inspiration for me. But the weirdest thing is, and this is why it's kind of an important part of the question here, I'm going to have a quick drink of this, is that in 1973, I think it was, I went to see Procol Harum, which is really weird, because I had no idea that 21 years later I would be their Hammond organ player.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody from Procol Harum. I went to see them with a full orchestra and choir. Gary was very young. I mean, Gary's in his 70s now, but he was probably late 20s, something like that. And I remember I went along with two of my sisters, I think my brother and my mother as well. And I saw Gary on stage, and at that time the organ player in Procol was Chris Coppin, who came into the band as the organ player after Matthew. Matthew, he wasn't in the band for very long, actually, Matthew.
Okay.
He was only very briefly, a couple of albums in 2 years or something. But I really loved Chris Coppin's playing. I've met I've met all of them, obviously. And so I remember coming out of there thinking, yeah, that's great. That's what I want to do. And I remember saying to my mother, that's what I'm going to do. She said, what? I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play. I didn't say I'm going to play in that band, but I said, I'm going to play rock music and keyboards and Hammond. And I did.
Wow.
So that was the first inspiration, really, was Procol Harum. And I had no idea that in 1992, which was 21 years later, I actually would be playing with them.
Wow.
That's the really weird thing in life. That synchronicity is very odd.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe in any weird mumbo jumbo stuff. That was just extraordinary. And I don't know whether this fits into your question, but it might do, because I think one of the questions you were going to ask me was, how did I get involved in Procol Harum?
Yeah, that was my next question.
So if you want to ask me that, should we do that?
Yeah, that's great.
This was, I used to play in a band called Big Country, which is a rock band, Scottish rock band. And we were, I think we'd broken up by then. At the time, the band had broken up. And the drummer, Mark Brzicki, and I formed another band with Pete Townshend's brother from The Who, Simon Townsend.
Yeah.
And we were recording an album in the Isle of Man, which is a little island over there, over there, and whichever way you're looking at it.
Yeah.
And we were recording, and the phone rang in the control room, and I picked it up, and this voice said, "Hi, can I speak to Mark Brzezinski, please?" I said, "No, I'm afraid he's actually recording at the moment. He was in the studio." "Oh, can you ask him to call me back?" I said, "Yeah, sure. Who's speaking, please?" He said, "It's Gary Brooker." I said, "Okay, hold on a minute. Can I take your number, Gary?" "Yeah," he gave me the number. "Okay, I'll get him to call you." Put the phone down. And I thought, that can't be Gary Brooker. Not Gary Brooker from Procol Harum. That's weird. Because he's retired and he runs a pub in Surrey, in Kent, you see. And, he'd done a few albums here and there, but Procol Harum had finished in 1978.
Yeah.
That version. And so I rang... so Mark came into the control room and I said, "Hey, Mark, you got to ring this guy." I gave him the piece of paper. And he came back about half an hour later, having been on the phone. He said, "Oh," he said, "I've got a session when I get back." I didn't write Procol Harum on it. I just said Gary Brooker. So I said, "What, with Procol Harum?" Jokingly, he said, "Yeah. How did you know that?" And he said, and I said, "Well, because of who you've just been speaking to." He said, "Yeah, I've just been speaking to the manager." I said, "No, you haven't. You've just been speaking to Gary Brooker." And he said, "Well, who's he?" I said, "Listen, I'll tell you who he is."
Yeah, I tell you.
So he ended up recording the album Prodigal Stranger, which was a Procol album in the early 90s, and they had reformed. And I just said to Mark, "Listen, they are probably one of my favourite all-time bands." I said, great Hammond stuff in that band. And I said, "What are you doing an album?" He didn't know what he was doing. He just said, "I'm doing a session." Anyway, long story. At the end of that, they did their album, and Mark and I were chatting. He said, "Oh yeah, they've reformed, In fact, I'm recording at a studio near my house next week, or whatever it was. Do you want to come down?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to, yeah." So I came down to the studio, and sure enough, Gary was in the control room. We started chatting, and we ended up going for a drink, beer, together in the pub afterwards, and got on really well straight away, famously. And I said something to Gary, which I still regret to this day, and we still laugh about it. But I said to him, the second album, the sixth album or whatever it was. I said the sixth album. He said, "Yeah." I said, "Track 3, what's that song called?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You do know that one?" And he said, "I know all of them. I wrote them." And I said, "Yeah, of course you did. Of course you did. That's my stupid." Yeah, I felt so stupid. "Well, of course I know. I wrote them." So we laughed about that and instantly got on. And then it wasn't long after that Mark said, "We're doing some shows," and the old organ player Matthew had come back into the band, and he'd gone off to study advanced mathematics at Cambridge University, and they had some shows together, and they didn't have an organ player. And Mark said, "Hey, what about Josh?" So Gary said, "Does he know the songs?" I said, "I know all of the songs." I mean, I wouldn't be able to just play them immediately, but I certainly would know them. So there, in 1993, 21 years after 1972, I was on stage with Procol Harum.
Yeah.
And the first gig I did, we were playing with Jethro Tull in Germany, and it was about 60,000 people. And I can remember thinking, I've got a wider shade of pale to do yet. Not that it's hard, but you just know that everybody is hanging on that first note.
Yeah.
So Gary's saying, he's very funny, Gary. You'll meet him, and he's on stage and he's playing the piano. He said, "Well, I'd like to do another song now, ladies and gentlemen." He said, "Some of you might know this song. Those of you that do can dance or clap or sing along if you like. Those of you that don't know it are either dead or too young." He's very funny, Gary. So he said, 1, 2, 3. And the drummer, who was a sitting drummer at the time, he went, like this. And he went, "Oh, stop, Gary, stop." Oh, God, what are you doing? So I'm thinking, can we just get on with this? Just do this one song, And at that point, I don't know what happened, but I had my Hammond CTR and it had the reverb on. It's very much part of the sound, the reverb. And I kicked something and it went all through the PA. And Gary said, "Oh, another organ player's exploded," which relaxed me. And then we did it, and that was the first time of playing a violin. Anyway, I've done it a million times since then, and I started then Then I played a little bit in the mid-90s with them, and then I joined on a full-term basis, full-time, 14 years ago. And we're still doing it. We've just done a new album, which you might have heard, I don't know. It's called Novum.
Yeah.
It's a new album, of which Gary and I have pretty much written together. And the guys helped as well. They contributed with the arrangements and things. So, composer and keyboard player.
Is the sound changed of Procol Harum?
The new album is a bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some moments of it that are very Procol Harum. But we both sat and chatted about it and the management stuff, and we said, if we don't make it different, the press are either going to say they haven't moved on, it's just like all the rest of it, or if we did it very, very different and modern, then they would say they've sold out.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to try and make a mix of both.
Yeah.
So it's a bit prog rocky at times, but most of it is live. We recorded it pretty much together in the studio.
Yeah.
No real, a few overdubs, backing vocals, a few guitar things, a couple of bits, but yeah. So when we play that stuff live, it does sound like the record because that's pretty much how we did it. Yeah. I hope tonight.
What do you think it's the secret about the sound of Procol Harum? I think the Hammond plays a very important role.
It's a massive part of it, because so many of the songs, they've never been a synth band.
No.
Even in the early 70s when Moog and obviously ARP, Gary played a bit here and there, but it's absolutely fundamental.
On the new album, are some synths or?
Well, I'm playing Hammond, Gary's playing piano, but I'm also I've got a Yamaha Montage, which is a great bit of kit.
I heard
it's no good as an organ, but it's great for everything else.
Yeah.
It's so some of the horn sounds and strings and we've also used some real good DXy type sounds as well, just because I like them. And they became part of it.
Yeah. But the original sound of Procol Harum is very organic.
Very organic, and there's a joke in there when you said organic as well. But yes, the organ is very much part of it, very, very much part of the sound. And in fact, when you hear anything without the organ parts in it with Procol, it doesn't sound complete.
No.
And I think because Gary's a great arranger as well, and his piano parts are written, well, they're not written, he played them with the organ in place as well. Mm-hmm. So if you take the organ out, there's like a hole in the music, and no other sound would fit it. If you say, I'd put a brass sound in there or strings or whatever, it wouldn't sound right. So the organ is very much part of it, and there's no doubt about the magic in A Whiter Shade of Pale. That's it's still every night we play it, and when we don't get fed up with it.
In 2019 we are touring with a theater tour, Sex, Hammond and Rock and Roll, and we play all the great Hammond hits of the 60s and the 70s, and we play also White Shade of Pale, of course.
Of course, you have to.
But you see it in the audience when we play songs of Deep Purple and everybody is happy and everybody is. But when we play A White Shade of Pale, the whole audience is quiet, are sitting on the top of the chair, and listening, and you feel the vibe. It's a magic song.
Do. There's lots of recorded versions of that song without the organ parts. And as Gary said when he wrote that song with Keith Reid, he was basing the song really on Bach's Air on a G string. And it's very, very similar to that. If you listen to the structure, the descending chords, the held note, the third above the root of the chord, the E in the C major chord, and that's really magical. And it's just that sound. I'll show you the sound later. But if you take the organ out of that, it still works.
Yeah.
Because of Gary's voice. If anybody else was singing it, you wouldn't get away with it. No. But it's every time we do it, and it still gives me goosebumps even now when we play that song, because as soon as Gary opens his mouth and starts singing, it's like, oh yeah, that sounds like the record. Yeah. Well, that's because it's him singing it, and his voice is terrific. So they certainly the organ, piano, and his voice is the magic in Procol. And of course, the original drummer was wonderful. They had different guitar players. Obviously, Robin Trower was brilliant, But yeah, fundamentally, the organ is a very important part
Yeah.
of Procol, and the magic of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a magical song. Is it based on the Bach song Air? Some people say it's yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. As Gary said, I didn't write it. Bach did.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there's lots of songs with those descending chords. You know, When a Man Loves a Woman, or no, we do those occasionally, just at the beginning of A Whiter Shade, just to Gary demonstrates that descending chord magic. You know, but once he sings it,
Yeah,
it's him.
yeah, it's him.
He's the magic in that song, really.
Yeah, and the Hammond.
And the organ.
It's yeah.
The two are a perfect marriage.
Yeah. Oh yes, it is. You are also a composer,
Yeah.
and you write songs for film,
Yes, I do.
but also a songwriter for.
Yeah. I've written an album with Gary, the new Procol album. I wrote an entire album for The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, and that's a few years ago now. That's probably about 2000 and, what year is it now? 18, isn't it? 2004, I think, 2003, 2004. And the album called The Vampire Suite, and I'm playing a C3 all the way through that. That's a good album, actually. There's some nice stuff on there. There's a song called Maybe My Soul on that album. And the organ solo is one of the best sounds I've ever got. It's a bit like Jimmy Smith, but it's just on the edge of more rocky than him.
Okay, yeah.
But yes, so as a composer, but I write music for television. And I've written the music for some really big shows. There's a show that is huge in the UK, and it's now gone to America, and it's gone all around the world, and I co-write with another chap, and the show's called Strictly Come Dancing, which is it's probably on a Saturday night here, because you get BBC One, don't you? It'll be on tonight.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
we have. So you think you can dance or something? But
I think it's the same show.
Okay.
And I think they use my music.
Wow.
But it's called it's called Strictly Come Dancing in the UK. In America, it's called Dancing with the Stars, and they use our music. And I think we've got 11 ASCAP awards now for that show. The music with that, the most played theme, or one of the most played themes in the States. So I do compose, and I write a lot of production music as well. And I did an album recently. It's kind of retro soul, but there's organ on that, and real horns, and I did a Northern Soul album for EMI Records. So it's all production music. So it's music that gets used in like commercials or TV.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's how it works. You probably have the same stuff here,
Yeah.
but it gets used all over the world. So
Yeah.
I do compose. Yeah.
When you are writing a new song,
Yeah.
are you sitting between the organ or do you that with the piano?
Do you know what I generally do these days? Is I don't start on any instrument.
No.
If I've got an idea, I keep playing it in my head until I know what it is.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if you've got an idea for something and you sit down at the guitar or the piano or whatever, it turns into something else.
That's true.
And I think stick it in there, make sure you know it, and then when you sit down at the instrument, it's a bit like you're working out a song you already know.
Yeah, yeah.
So I tend to write that way nowadays. Also, sounds can sort of become an inspiration for a song. So it might be that, perhaps an organ sound or a piano sound or a synth, whatever it might be. You might think, oh, that's good. I like that. What's this? And you might end up turning it into something. But I think generally, these days, I start here with a hook or whatever it might be, and then turn it into whatever it might be.
I do the same.
Do you? Yeah. I think we all do. If you're a good composer, I think it's a bit like, imagine writing a story.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just start writing a story without an idea, would you?
No.
Because it could be about anything. So you tend to write, a good author, storyteller, whether it be fiction or fact, would have the story up here first of all, whatever the plot might be. And I think that needs to be the same. I think there are far too many people writing music these days that is almost written by the computer. They're dragging loops. Logic Audio is a great example of that. Dragging loops in, and people are saying, "Oh yeah, I'm a composer." No, you're not. You just You're just manipulating somebody else's stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the best stuff comes from here.
Yeah. I know also you are touring now with the XK5.
Yes.
The Hammond XK5.
Yeah.
Can you tell us something about the instrument, about your...
I can tell you lots about it.
Yeah.
I can tell you
You
that...
tell me in the car a nice story about the XK3C on a gig, on a concert in America.
Okay, this is a true story.
Yeah.
So we're playing on tour in the States, and I had my XK3C organ, which I hadn't had that long, but it has the wooden legs and the lower manual, so it looks like a B3 on the stage. And Procol Harum fans are very fussy about their sounds, and they almost feel like they own us, the real diehard fans. So they're very specific about what they like. Anyway, we did a great show, and this guy who was a fan, obviously, he came up to me at the end of the show. We were in an after-show bar or something. He said, "Hey, Josh." I said, "Yeah, what?" He said, "Hey, buddy, I just wanted to say hi and thank you. Appreciate so much the show that you did for us, and I just loved that. The Hammond sound man was terrific." He said, I said, "Yeah, well, it's a Hammond." He said, "Oh, great. Yeah, well, I can tell that because, I mean, it's like, you know, obviously a B3, but thank God you're not using any of that digital shit." He said, what was it? Was it like an A100 with like legs or whatever? Or because he couldn't see, it was quite a long way away from the stage. And I said, no, it's called a Hammond XK3C. He said, "So what is that, like is it a tone wheel or something? I don't know that one." I said, "No, it's that digital shit." And I saw his face go, "What?" He said, "You what?" And I said, "Yeah, it's a Hammond digital organ. It's a new one." "You mean it's not a tone wheel?" I said, No, it's digital, and it's well, I'll be damned," he said. It kind of sounded cool. I wanted him to say it sounded shit, but he'd already said it sounded great.
That's nice. Yeah.
So with the XK5,
Yeah.
I didn't think it. Well, I have played the digital B3 many times. My problem with the XK3C is I always felt that it didn't feel very punchy at the top end.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't quite scream properly.
Yeah.
It was really good in the middle, but once you get up the top, it got thin. A bit like the old, M100s and the other ones, because it ran out of tone wheels. This XK5, Hammond have got so right, because it's fat, really fat, right to the top.
Yeah.
And it screams, and the key click, and the 3-position key contacts as well.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous how good it is. I mean, obviously, the old Hammonds are not going to be here forever. Most of them have probably, the good ones are still around, but the old ones have ended up in a scrap yard somewhere, and they're becoming unreliable unless you've got somebody like you that's got dedicated to just looking after it the whole time. You can't rely on, if you're touring band and you're using a lot of hire equipment, you can't rely on the old ones anymore, because you turn up, half of it doesn't work, or everything's crackling, or some of the notes don't work, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
This XK5, I can honestly say, is the best new Hammond ever. And I'm every night now that I get on stage, I'm sort of sitting there happy, thinking, I love this. This is it. This works properly. So yeah, I'm a huge fan.
Okay.
And it looks great. And the fact that there's 4 sets of drawbars.
Yeah.
The chorus they've got so right as well. See, chorus 3.
Yeah.
Slow Leslie.
Yeah.
God, I love that sound. None of the black,
No,
the
no.
reverse keys. I don't use them because I'm like you. I'm a player and I adjust the drawbars as I go.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, is all part of it.
Yeah.
Part of the tone. You feel it. You might think, I just need a bit more 1 foot there, or whatever it might be. And it does change. It depends on also how the band are playing. If the band are digging in harder, they're getting heavier, you might want to pull a few more out just to give you a bit more punch.
Most of the digital instruments are very flat into the dynamics, the expression. But this thing this organ is very good.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic bit of equipment.
Yeah.
You might have noticed I'm a fan.
We of Hammond sessions think that the Hammond is not just an organ. it's a sort of lifestyle. It's vintage, like this one, the lamp. Or it's a feeling. It's the smell of oil.
I think what it is actually is that it's no joke here, but it sounds like a joke. The very word organ. If you just put an IC on the end of it, organic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what Hammond is. It's organic because it's not just a preset and a sound.
No.
You know, or you've got 10 piano sounds or whatever. It's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
And it's as variable as they've always been. So, from a sound point of view, it's extraordinarily variable and infinitely variable, isn't it? There is something romantic about the real thing, the wood. I mean, I still use my old Leslie 145, and we were talking about this earlier. The smell, you know, and when you sit next to a real Leslie, the wind is going. Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, smell the valves and the oil and that slight warm burning smell. I imagine that smell. In fact, I keep listening to my X5 K5, thinking, and the tone wheel's going around.
Yeah,
It's that convincing. So it's almost a bit like you're in a secret club if you're a Hammond player.
Yeah,
you know, you and I got on straight away because we both knew that we've got a similar interest.
Yeah.
So it's like a hobby almost, and it's my profession.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a lifestyle, I guess. A bit like owning a Mercedes or an Apple or whatever it might. I don't mean an Apple suite. I mean Apple computer. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And Hammond, I don't think it's a snobbery thing. I don't think you know what snobbery is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think that's what it is, because if you're a purist, you're okay with that SK5, because a few years ago there was no replacement. You needed to have either a B or a C or an A100.
Yeah.
Because everything else didn't sound right. The Roland made a few organs here and there, and the Korg was quite good, but it was never as good as when you got in the real thing. Oh yeah. And I think it's a bit like being in a comfy pair of shoes. You sit behind the SK5 and it feels like a B3.
Yeah.
It looks like a B3. Sounds like a B3. So it's a bit of everything.
Feels like a B3.
Feels like a B3. Sounds like a B3. Looks like a B3. You know, it is romantic as well, definitely, because I was in a pub with my family down in Kent, in England, a couple of years ago. And my wife said, "What do you keep looking at?" And I said, "There's something in that corner." I said, I know what it is. And she said, "Well, it's just like a box with a cover over it." I said, No. There's a Hammond B3 there. And that's a Leslie next to it. And she said, "Well, why? What do you want?" I said, "Excuse me." And I went over and I lifted the cover up, pulled the cover back. Wow, there's a B3, and it was in really good condition.
Wow.
So I said to the staff, "Hey, can I have a go?" And they wouldn't let me. They said, "No, there's an old man that comes in here and he plays it once a week." And I should imagine half of the young people that are in there have no idea what that instrument is, and you know that it's this beautiful old organic instrument sitting there, but probably give them tremendous pleasure. So yeah, it's everything.
Yeah.
I said in an interview with Hammond a few years ago about the XK3C, and I thought that was fantastic at the time. It's not as good as this. But I said Hammond is like oxygen. You can't live without it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that about it. You know, that you can have a synthesizer or a pretend one, but if you play the real thing, it's a different world.
That's true. And that's why we have all the years touring with that big vintage organs, and now we have the XK5. It's 25 kilos, and it sounds like
But you know, what I'm amazed about, and what I'm so pleased about, is that it's become an instrument that people want to hear again.
Yeah.
Because in the early '80s, I'll just tell you one more thing here. I've just remembered. I had a Hohner clavinet, a Wurlitzer EP200A, a Selena string machine.
Oh yeah.
My Acetone GT7, and I swapped the whole lot for a brand new Korg Poly 6.
Yeah.
because I was told that that would do everything. So I got it home and got it out of the box, and I plugged it in and started playing it, and I played 5 notes, 6 notes. Then I played... That's weird, it doesn't sound like... The chord doesn't sound right. So, my stupidity, I didn't know that it only plays 6 notes. And within 3 days, I was, oh, no, what have I done? Why have I got rid of all this great stuff? But in the early 80s, people wanted you to have polysynths.
Yeah.
They didn't want a Hammond and a clavinet and a Rhodes and a...
No.
You know, but luckily I did rebuy them, and I still got them, as you know, the clav and the Fender and bits and bobs. But I'm so pleased that it's become popular again, and I'm so amazed that Hammond have spent so much time, energy, and money in developing something that is a pure instrument.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. It hasn't got a synthesizer in it or a drum machine.
No.
It's a Hammond organ.
Yeah.
And that's all it's trying to be, and that's all it is, and it's all it needs to be. Great stuff. Good man. Yeah.